Today in the show, we have Brian Duff, who runs mind4survival.com. He has an absolutely eclectic background in various fields. So, welcome to the show today, my friend.
Thanks, man. It's good to be on. I'm stoked to be here. This is fun.
Thanks for having me on your podcast a few months ago.
Yeah, where are you at right now? Since you're
I'm in,
always all over the place.
I'm in Scotland at the moment.
Okay, good. I thought that was the same room you were in when we did my show. Okay,
I'll be off to Vienna, then Ukraine again.
nice.
So, what is it that brought you into survival?
I just it's hardwired into me. I don't know if it was like we were talking a little bit before the show when I was like 3 years old. I grew up in Southern California, and so there was a major earthquake. And I remember at 3, my mom came into the room. And I had this big plaster Snoopy hanging on the wall that, you go places when you're a kid and you paint these little statues and stuff. Well, it was this, I don't know how much it weighed, but it weighed a lot. As a little kid, I like, that weighs a lot. And so I had painted this plaster Snoopy, and this earthquake is shaking our house. My mom came in and picked the plaster Snoopy off the wall because it's hanging over my bed. And I remember as a little kid going, oh, that would have probably hurt if that thing fell off the wall during this earthquake and smashed my head. This big concrete thing over my head. So I don't know if that's when it got me down the road, but I was always the kid, man, like in the States, it wasn't up until probably the late 80s, early 90s that you weren't required to wear a seatbelt by law. And so but I was always the kid getting the old seatbelts and putting them on. I've just always been this way.
So, when it comes to survival, the more I learn about survival, the sort of less that I'm confident of my abilities to manage a sort of extreme scenario with like a Mad Max scenario. And almost like the survival that I'm doing is more like a luxury thing to basically wait for the government to come rescue me in the worst case scenario for like 1 or 2 days if it's like a minor blackout. So, how do you have the motivation to keep producing content on stuff that's only really going to be useful in like a 0.001% chance of something bad happening?
Well, I think so part of it we have to understand is like if you ask most people why they prepare, they're going to be able to cite something specific. Like I talked about the earthquake, right? Here in the States, a lot of people after Hurricane Katrina saw that there wasn't a whole lot of help coming fast anyway. And so, like I know on my podcast, a lot of people have said that, Hurricane Katrina got them into it. It depends on what you lived through, right? And so, but the reason we prepare, and preparing is a struggle, right? It would be much nicer not to worry and to go about our days happy and not thinking about this stuff and not trying, well, how do I get an extra can of food? Where can I stock this up and all that? That would be great to do. But we prepare because we have a fear of something that's based upon like our human condition, our human brain, past trauma. Something has made us say, I want to make sure I feel safe and secure. Because at the same time, while that's a fear, I consider it a realistic fear because we have repeated cases throughout history where bad things have happened and people, in spite of being a good citizen, in spite of paying your taxes, in spite of the intent of the government, good or bad, weren't able, they had to survive on their own without assistance for some time. So I think when it comes to preparedness, we need to manage our expectations a little bit and say, if you could be Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg and have an entire underground bunker complex built and stocked full of as much long-term storage food as you can. And at some point, unless you do something, you're going to run out of food. And you may run out of water. So everybody has an expiration date on them when it comes to your preparedness. But I think if we look at it as what's the most likely course of events that's going to happen? Well, you could have something that like in Ukraine that's going on right now, where there's, there's areas that are just ravaged and there's still people trying to live in areas. And so they're living in that where after 2 years, they're probably out of supplies if they had been a prepper beforehand. But if you go into that and maybe you can make your supplies, make your situation longer or better or not as uncomfortable, that's a good thing. And then the other side is most of the struggles that we find ourselves in aren't that level, some cataclysmic SHTF level of happening. It's a Hurricane Katrina maybe where it's 3 to 7 days on your own. So if you have a week to 2 weeks of food, you're okay. You'll be fine. And that's the most likely scenario. Even the more likely one, and this I experienced this years ago when my PTSD from working overseas and everything got so bad that I literally couldn't work anymore. It was just wiped out. The one thing I had was, well, hey, I don't have any money coming in and I got to figure something out, but I don't have to go to the grocery store and pay for food. I have my emergency supply of food. And right now I'm in a personal emergency. So that got me through that. So I think if you maybe work on the perspective of looking at it, that it's empowering you to get through the vast majority of life unscathed or relatively unscathed. And that because there's that point where we all may come to it, or our preparedness is done, like everything we've done, we've gone through everything, we've lost, where we kept all of our stuff's part of the disaster and it's all gone. Well, we all hit that point where life's going to suck. So one, acknowledge that life's going to suck at times. Like it just is. Like we all struggle at times. And so that's what we're preparing for. But at the same time, I think if we also turn around and say, I can't let my fear of the future, this minor thing possibly happening, ruin my today. We still need to have good todays. So use it as an empowering thing that like, hey, I'm ready to go for almost anything the world could throw at me. And you know what? In the meantime, just in case it doesn't work out that great, I'm going to try to have a really good life today and enjoy myself and find the good in things. And I think that kind of helps reframe our stuff. So you got both barrels of my prepper pep talk there.
Oh, it's very well put. Definitely for city slickers, money is like the best prep because we can't really go out there and harvest wood and trap animals, and there's not a lot of like trees that are edible around here, especially with the Scottish climate. So, but then again, money is becoming increasingly turbulent with like artificial intelligence affecting a lot of the white collar jobs from cities.
Mm-hmm.
I made a rant about it on with the Spanish guy, parody. So, yeah, I mean, it is a luxury that, like, I do find though that if you have a lot of prepping stuff, so like for me, carrying medical first aid equipment is like a prep. It's like the thing is, if you start carrying about a miniature first aid kit with you everywhere you go, eventually it's like you never have to use it. I think there's been one or two situations I've actually used it, but then again, most of the time it's just carrying around stuff with me. You get a bit
But
complacent.
let
You're
me
like,
ask you.
oh,
Hey, let me ask you a question though. But weren't both times you used it? Weren't you like stoked? Like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I'm able to help somebody or help make
well,
the situation better.
both times it happened, I was basically in the house, and I could have probably fudged together something else. There was one time actually at a church, somebody had fallen down on some glass, but they also had a first kit there as well. So there's not really been a situation where I outside had a tourniquet and had to. Even before I was
So
prepping, I never was never in a situation where I met somebody that injured.
yeah, I can show you my bag. So I carry a fanny pack with me. It's made to carry a gun because I'm in Texas. I carry a gun when I go out.
Yeah,
And
show me, man.
here, hang on a second. I'll be right back. All right, let me see if I can do this here. So you can carry. I have a license to carry concealed, and in where I'm at in Texas, they have what they call constitutional carry, where anybody can carry a gun. Like you don't need any government authorization to carry a gun. If you have a license to carry, you can go more places with it. So I have a license to carry. A lot of people will carry on their hip or they carry an appendix holster and they just wear their shirt over it. I don't like wearing pants, and I wear cargo shorts and I wear t-shirts. So one of the problem with doing that is it's like carrying a brick on your belt, right? Guns aren't light. And then the other side of it is, and I carried a gun for a lot of years doing what I did. And so and the other side of it is you can see it a lot of times, depending on how your t-shirt rides, you can see it. So most guys will wear a button up the front shirt so that the shirt hangs out looser over it, and so it doesn't call what it's printing, where someone looking at can see the bulge of the gun, and they know, yeah, so it's truly concealed. Just so the way I live my life, what I do is I want to have something. I don't want to carry it on my belt, and people will argue that, well, like, it slows you down. 100% it does, but it's a trade-off. It's my risk assessment, what I want to do. So what I do is I carry this with me when I go outside. I just got to pick this one up yesterday, so I'm still working with it. And there's a thing that shoots pew-pew beans in here. We can't say it too much on YouTube, and I can't show it to you on YouTube because it'll literally get your video pulled down. But in here, because we were talking about first aid stuff, I have a tourniquet, right? This is when I worked for the Department of State, when I did diplomatic security. This is one of our blowout kits. It has all this stuff in it.
What do you call it? A what kit?
We call it blowout kits. So this is for like it. It has a pressure bandage. It has just all kinds of stuff to treat major bleeding and treat like a patient that got, mostly we carried them for shooting, like people that got shot. I carry my scissors. I'm still adding stuff to this as I figure it out. This is a flashlight that can go on the end of my my firearm. So,
oh wow!
But I carry that. I don't keep that on the. Oh yeah. I don't keep it on
Shining it to the webcam here.
Yeah, right. But I can put this on my pistol if I want. But in the meantime, just to have the option, I carry it as my flashlight. This is the Swiss Army knife. I believe this is the Huntsman, and I have it because it has an awl. So if you're doing fieldcraft stuff, an awl to work on, for threading things through or repairing shoes. It has a saw. Obviously has the knife and a couple other little things I want. But I want the saw I want the ability to saw something. I carry an extra light and then a whistle. What else do I have in here? Oh, big lighter. Oh, and a lock. So that way, because the firearm compartment, what I can do is if I'm somewhere where there's kids around or I have to put it somewhere, even when I secure it in my house, I can lock that compartment with the firearm to try to keep it safe so no one can get in there.
So basically my EDC, when I don't have a car, it's a laptop backpack like so. It's a Samsonite one, and I've got just put some cardboard in there to protect it, give it a bit extra padding. Mm-hmm. And then if I'm not taking my laptop with me, then I've got this little thing here. I don't have I'm tired of buying Chinese crud, man. Right, so this thing depends what I'm taking with it. So if I'm taking the laptop backpack, then the bottle will basically fit inside the backpack, and I've got a smaller one that I can put in here like that. In terms of gear, I've got a minimal first aid kit, but I've got my wireless headphones here. I've got a tourniquet.
Good.
I've got a pair of sunglasses, just a small pair of Ray-Bans. And then I've got some gear. I've got a bit of Kevlar cord. I've got a survival blanket. I've got a set of matches. I've got a Fresnel lens. A pair of clippers. The amount of times that's probably more used than anything because like I'll have like a back eye crisp or something like that. I want to keep it fresh, that's quite useful for things like that. I've got a Bic lighter, and then I've got a windproof lighter. So basically I've got a little compartment there that I use for that. And then I've got I've got a candle with a bit of toothpicks and cotton wool. And that's my gear in a sense. And then the main compartment,
that's a good little kit.
Yeah, and then I've got my first aid kit, which is basically a boo-boo kit. And then I've got a bigger first aid kit that that I'll take with me if I'm, don't know, doing more. Well, I'll have things like triangular bandage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
that's
had a bit
good.
of a, yeah. So I had to improvise a sling a few weeks ago. I dislocated my shoulder, and I made a
Oh,
sling out of paracord. I basically made a loop, and I put one around my neck, and that held up pretty good. And then I
yeah,
got
that
some.
worked.
Yeah, it worked fine because without that, it would have really sucked. It went back in place, but dislocations are a that's a great
Yeah.
prep is to learn how to fix dislocation in the field, like you, especially yourself. You have to basically go back there like
Hmm.
that. Agony, man.
Yeah, they don't feel good, man.
In terms of the rucksack, the bag here, obviously the laptop is like a niche thing. Like there's no, you won't be. That's basically my deal, right? So I'm working as a web developer, but then I've got my like installation. So like this will go in my laptop backpack. So this basically has a whole bunch of stuff, right? So this is I don't know what you call these, like a net warmer. In here I have a merino wool beanie or tammy hat.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
have inside here I have some small gloves. They're not even the same. They're just like scrap gloves. And then I have merino wool socks, fast drying, and then I have a couple of arm warmers for
Nice.
cycling. So these are cycling things, but these are just an extra quick layer if you want to just combine it with the other
Yeah,
clothing.
that works
Fast
good.
drying
You know,
stuff.
they make those arm warmers. They make a Kevlar version of those.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah, that's
Splash proof?
like cut and abrasion
Oh,
resistant.
very useful. I
So
need to
like,
get a pair of those.
yeah, you could use it almost, defensively too if someone's slashing at
That's
you with something.
that's the best thing because in a
And
non
I think it comes down like they make them so it comes down, over your thumb, and so it's across the
bro,
top of
I'm
your
going to
hand
get
a
a
bit
pair of
too.
them, man. That is the best thing because
Yeah,
in a knife fight, that's the bit that anyone who knows what they're doing with knife fighting is going to be basically like a fencing match, and you're going for
yeah.
each other's wrist or there. So that is pretty much ideal, really.
You need to move to Texas, man.
Yeah. So
Get
I've
you a
got a
big
little.
truck. And,
Yeah. So this is another useful prop. So living in Scotland, I know what it's like to keep dry. And this is I bought this
yeah.
today actually. It's an Arcturus multifunctional poncho. I've got a Miltech one that's
Yeah.
twice the weight, which I'll use for the Mad Max scenario. But this thing here, it goes down to your knees, and
Hmm.
I went rocking a little bit in Scotland, and I had an umbrella for a little while. I had an umbrella, man, and it just after 6 hours on the walking around, I just totally soaked. So like ponchos are like the way to keep dry in Scotland, pretty much, because you've got that
Yeah.
really fine misty rain that blows
I'm
onto
a
you. You know.
fan of the military poncho, man. That's what I use in the military. I pack it in all my stuff. I have a poncho. It's like my big kit thing. I have a military poncho because they're made pretty tough, and as long as you keep it in decent shape, you can use it as a improvised shelter. It's like with shelter, right? You want something to sleep on, something to sleep under, and something to sleep in, right? So the poncho, your poncho, uh, can make a good tent shelter for you. And then they make poncho liners. It's like a little kind of blanket that you put inside of your poncho. So if you're standing there, if you have one that has a hole in it, mine has a hole in it, I could put the poncho liner on with the poncho over it so I can keep warmer when I'm out walking around. But then you can use the poncho liner as a blanket if you pile up some debris on the ground to something to sleep on, then you can sleep inside of your blanket. The other thing is because the poncho goes inside the poncho liner, you can zip it up or you can fasten it so the poncho liner and the poncho make a pretty good sleeping bag.
In bug out bags, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, like, or even just like a inch bag. I'm not going to have a tent. I'm basically going to have a bivy bag and a liner and a large mosquito net that I can put around to my waist. Depends
See,
what kind of bag you have.
I think on the when it comes down, and I used to always kind of poo-poo on the inch bag, but I could see the purpose of the inch bag, right? So the bug out bag, I look at bug out bags as more of like a get home bag. or you're going to a friend's house. Like there's a place you're going to that has stuff. It's typically a bug out bag's about, most people put about 3 days worth of stuff in it. So if you're looking at an inch bag, we're like, hey, the whole world's gone to heck. I can't stay in my house. I have to go, and I'm never planning on coming back. In that, I can see, because I could see the point of considering putting a tent in that, because at that point you're doing field expedient shelter no matter what. And if the weather's crap, I would rather, yeah, you can, maybe you do fieldcraft survival stuff, or you go out and build a bushcraft house out of sticks or something like that. That's out there. But I know with a tent, I always have shelter that I can get in and get me out of the direct hit of the elements. So like on something where you're planning on like, this is it, I'm done, I'm out on my own, I'd look at like a lightweight backpacking tent even. They may not last that great, but I would consider that. It's such a so one of the things I pack in my bug out bag is, because I have my poncho and poncho liner, is I pack bungee cords. These, like, they're real thin, they're kind of long bungee cords, and they add a little bit of weight to it. But I found when I was in the military, if I ever want to do anything with my poncho, people are always using their 550 cord, right, to tie up a poncho and do things. I would just, rather than burn up 550 cord, I'd use the bungee cords. So you just throw the hook on it, wrap it around a tree, and hook over itself. And I had it like a tent up in 30 seconds using those bungee cords. So,
The
but
way I use it is I have the bungee cord when I'm cycling, and I throw the poncho on top because I've always got a laptop with me a lot of the time, so I can't. I don't want to be messing around putting waterproof layers on my backpack in while I'm getting wet. So what I'll do is when I'm cycling, I'll basically put the poncho over and I'll put the bungee cord around my waist, and that just holds the poncho in.
do you have a in your backpack or wherever you put your? Do you have like a, like in my bags? I put, not my daily bag, but like um, in my 3 day bag and stuff like that. My bug out bag. I always put a couple of waterproof. I put a waterproof bag in there with a trash bag.
Yeah, I always have
So
like I always have
all
bags
my
like
stuff
so.
goes in a waterproof bag.
Yeah, I usually have bags just for like load extension. So like I'm going shopping, I've always got a bag on me or whatever, and if I want to carry extra stuff, I even have like in my guitar bag. I have a guitar bag, and I often combine that with
Yeah,
my
but what I'm saying is all my anything I put in my backpack all goes
yeah,
in a waterproof bag. Yeah, yeah.
right, yeah. So
And then they
yeah,
make some good waterproof bags now that have shoulder attachments on it. So I think mine, the latest one I have set up, is I have a waterproof bag that has shoulder straps. They're really lightweight. So I actually put a couple of plastic bags underneath that are folded up in case I need to use a trash bag or something for something. But then I would, if I was with somebody and they didn't have a bag, I could always pull that bag out, put the stuff in the trash bag in my backpack, and now they would have a bag to be able to carry stuff.
yeah, trash bags are amazing. You can use it for so many things. Insulation for the ground for
Mm-hmm.
making a mattress, and they're not a fabric, so all fabrics are basically permeable. Like these Osprey backs that cost like 180 new. After 6 hours of walking in Scottish drizzle, that thing will soak through pretty much. And
Oh
they
yeah,
have this green thing that you can wrap the thing with, but I just can't be bothered with it. So I'm just going to use the poncho next time I'm out on the ruck in the Scottish weather, because Scottish weather, it's not these hard drops that you can deflect with even like a it's that the wind just takes it and blows it
yeah,
horizontally in you.
yeah. Well, and that was the thing I learned in the military. Like you have to make sure none of your stuff gets wet. That's why I'm so, where I see people when they pack a backpack, they don't pack it inside a waterproof bag or a trash bag in their backpack. And I'm like, all your stuff's going to be soaked, man. Like everything you have is going to be soaked.
Yeah, in terms of footwear
And
now,
once you get wet, like you're talking about it. Once you get wet and your stuff gets wet, dude, it's miserable. Like not
yeah,
having dry clothes to change into just sucks.
yeah, you need to have two pairs of shoes with you. So what I do in Scotland now is I'm experimenting a little bit. What I'm going to do next time I go a ruck is I'm going to have my basically breathable shoes, whatever it is, trainers if it's summer, and I'll have a non-Gore-Tex pair of boots. But then I'll have a pair of sandals as well, so that when it starts to chuck it down, what I'll do is I'll take the warmer boots and then I'll wrap them in a plastic bag and I'll hang them on a hook on my on
Hmm.
my belt underneath the poncho, and I'll wear sandals so my feet can get soaking wet. And then when it comes time to go to my shelter, I'll just put on
Have you looked at some of the like neoprene, and there's other types of material that they use, but kind of like shoes that you put on, like that they they're really tight to your feet. It's almost like putting on a sock, but they have like a shoe bottom and stuff on. They make them a lot for doing like for using in water and stuff like that. You
yeah,
can
I
also
like
look at something like that because they're really light and you can roll them up, and so you can actually pack them pretty well. And so like that's what I look at, because I had some sandals, but then when I went out with the sandals on, I ended up kicking my toes on rocks.
Yeah,
There
you
was
need to get
nothing
ones
good.
that are made for hiking because they protect your feet. Like the last
Oh
trip I went, I took a pair of sandals with me. They're like flip flops, and that was a pain to
yeah.
walk on, man. Like, but completely breathable, and quickly drying. But like you need to have that sort of a layer, but lots of
Well,
holes in there.
yeah, because the other side of that too is if you're ever somewhere and you're not out moving around all day, to get your feet out of your boots, right? Let your boots dry out, let your feet recover, and so like I know at the end of a long day, if you can, man, if you've been in boots all day, get your feet out of those boots, dry your feet, clean them, be really good to them. When I was in the infantry, man, like if you didn't take care of your feet every day, you're going to have problems a lot of times. So take care of your feet, and then you want to let your boots dry out. But now if you have your sandals or your river shoes or whatever you're doing, it gives you something else to put pressures in different spots. So you don't keep hitting those same spots where you might be getting hot spots that turn into blisters, and it lets your feet air out and get out. It's a really good thing to have that extra pair if you can.
Yeah, so also like in an inch scenario, you don't basically have like you need to be able to repair your boots as well, and so the boots are more kind of. It's going to rain less normally than it is when it's dry. So most of the time you're wearing your boots, but when it does rain, get your boots out of the rain under your poncho in a plastic bag and wear your hiking sandals, and then use like if it's cold, wear like a merino wool or a sealskins waterproof sock, and you can hang these out to dry anyway. With once you take your sandals off, you can put your boots back on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
Scottish man's experience anyway. That's why I'm refining my staying dry. Also, umbrellas are useful as well if the rain is coming down like that. Save a lot of time. So I'll have a small umbrella with me and a poncho, and so like if it's just like I'm walking
See,
10 minutes,
I watched some stuff the other day, and I've started rethinking umbrellas in that people are getting, the big golf umbrellas.
yeah,
People are
yeah,
using the big golf umbrellas now because they're like, they work as sunshades. They really they're so big, they really help keep you dry.
yeah.
And they're cumbersome, but like in your vehicle or something, I'm going to probably get one because there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can, if you have a kid or somebody sitting there, you could use it to shade them by just laying it down on the ground.
Yeah. So basically, if a golf umbrella is what you can do with those, and I haven't tried this yet, and I thought about patenting an idea. But basically, if you take that the shank and you dig a hole that's half the length, basically what you
Yeah.
can do is you can put that in the ground and you can curl up inside that umbrella. And in a survival situation, that will keep you out the wind off you and the rain off you until you find a better situation.
Right. Nice.
Because I can actually sit and squat. So I had this thing. I was up somewhere in Scotland and it started to rain, and I'd basically squatted down and brought the umbrella down with me, and there was only like that much gap between the edge of the umbrella and the ground, and it just kind of kept me warm and dry for a little bit. It wasn't a survival situation; it's
Yeah.
just a comfort situation.
No, I mean but that's what. See, that's the benefit of all the preparedness. When you were talking about earlier about like, well, how do you knowing, like eventually it's screwed, you're screwed. Well, but like just because if you're into preparedness, right, and you have that umbrella, the bigger umbrella, now you get a chance to be more comfortable at places. That's what it is, right? That's really what preparedness is. It's about trying to maintain that sense of normalcy, and part of being normalcy is comfort, right? You don't want to be. We don't have to prepare to stink and suck. So by you doing that, like yeah, like hey, I don't want to be out here in the rain, but at the same time, you're out there in the rain. At least you're able to keep dry and comfortable by having the umbrella set.
Hmm.
So that's the good side, really good side of preparedness.
Another thing that I'm practicing is pushing my gear beyond its expiry date and repairing things as long as I can. Like I'm going to sort this backpack. I mean, I could get a new one, but I'm just if, or even the shoes, I'll like make them go further than they're supposed to. That umbrella's like 15 years old. It's coming off the top, and I'm thinking how I'm going to reattach it, but it still works. It's like it's not going to rust. There's not any really rustable parts in there, and the fabric. There's a green jacket I've had for 30 years now, and that was a
Mm-hmm.
cheap regatta one. It's still going. I mean, it's probably could last my lifetime. It does not have any tears in it, so like the amount of stuff we throw away, we don't need to. We should just learn how to use it and repair it. Gorilla tape is a fantastic way to repair most things now. I've got a bike in Austria that I'm the tire started to the metal bit started to rip away from it was a bicycle tire. So what I've wrapped it up in several layers of Gorilla tape, and it took out the bump and it held it together. And I'm just testing it before I make a video on it. I'll probably test it another 4 or 5 months and see if the Gorilla tape still holds up. I mean, because you're going to have to be able to repair tires in a long-term Mad Max scenario. No one's going to make new tires for you.
Yeah, could be. And that's what you're doing, right? You're trying to become more resilient,
Yeah.
right? And so there's only so much we can do. That's it. We only we only have so much capability. It's your capability to do something is dependent upon three factors: your mindset, your ability, which is made up of your knowledge, skill, and resources, and then luck. You can be the best at doing something and do it great, and then bad luck hits, and now guess what? You could have you could be Mark Zuckerberg with his bunker that he's built somewhere, or a couple of them, and stock full of food, and the asteroid hits your bunker. Like that's
Yeah.
ground zero. Well, you're done, right? So luck always trumps everything. But when you look at the other side of it, mindset and ability, which is knowledge, skill, and resources, you can have the best mindset, you can have the best knowledge, you can have the best skill, but if you don't have the resources or you don't have good resources, it decreases your ability your ability to be capable of doing something, your ability to overcome the problem. So again, that's where preparedness we struggle is your resources. Do you have quality resources, and do you have enough quality resources that last? If you have a mountain of junk that doesn't work, well, you got a mountain of junk that doesn't work. And so how long do you depend on that? And then what do you do? What's its backup? That's where you get into pace planning, right? Sometimes it's like something's expensive, so I use a pace plan: primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Something's expensive, well, but it's good and it's durable. Let me buy that. That's my primary means. I have a water filter that sits on the sink, for example. My alternate means is, I don't want to drink the water right out of the tap, but I can drink the water right out of the tap if I have to. I mean, I've been in there's places in the world where you can't drink the water out of. There's not even a tap. So okay, that's my alternate. My contingency is I have a bunch of jugs. I have 100 to 200 gallons of water set aside in jugs. And then my emergency is I don't really have it. At that point, it's like, what am I doing for water, right? And so the same thing goes with all this. If you figure out your primary equipment, for something, your primary umbrella is the big one. Your alternate umbrella is the little one, and then your contingency is the one that's broken or half broken that you're working on fixing. Then you're usually pretty good.
I think that if you want to immediately upskill your ability to survive, you basically have to leave
What's
any
that?
large city. If you want to increase your prepping ability, you basically have to leave any large town or city and go live rural. That's like if you really are worried, that's what you got to do.
Well, or you have to be in a position in the city to be fortified enough where you're not worried about what's happening on. Maybe you live in an apartment in some sort of high rise, right? That has a balcony that faces the sun most of the time, whatever. And you reinforce your door. Maybe it's a condo, right? And so you put a metal door in and you have a metal door frame, and like it's going to be impossible for people to kick through it. You might be able to get by, like as long as no one sets the building on fire, and you have the space in there. Maybe you have a room, that's all just your preps, and you have a mountain of freeze dried food. Yeah, if you're quiet and you stay out of limelight, because at some point, if we're talking like total just there's no rule of law. Everything's, is Thomas Hobbes, I think he was Brit, maybe he was Dutch philosopher, said years ago, right? And in the rule in the state of nature, which is when we don't have rule of law, it's the state of nature. The state of mankind and the state of nature, their life is nasty, brutish, and short. Right. So if we're talking total Mad Maxville, and well, maybe you're sitting in your apartment because no one could get in there, but at some point someone may come by and you might have to deal with something. But how long, how long do you think the cities would be? I don't think it would take long for cities to either empty out or for it to eat itself.
I'm
Because
absolutely
once the
mind blown. I've
supermarket,
never thought of that prep before. Concrete, living in a
once
concrete
the super,
apartment.
well, yeah, and once the supermarkets are gone, that's that 3 days supply of food, all the convenience stores and the Doritos and the chips and the crisps or whatever you guys say over there, all that food from the stores is gone. Then people are living on what they have in their homes. And if most people don't have but 3 days, at 7 days, it's pandemonium at least by 7 days. And at some point in there, people haven't ate and they're like, I don't have any food in my apartment. So they've left or they've gone around knocking on doors and trying to figure it out. So most people have probably moved on. Like I don't, maybe I'm wrong. It's just how I see cities happening. People are going to move, right? And then you will have the people that get violent, want to take, and it's the Mad Maxville stuff. But yeah, there's that's where people, because part of the thing is if you're in some condo like we're describing or some suburban home is where are you going? You're throwing your bag on your back and you're just heading out to the countryside. Well, like in Southern California, I'm not sure how it's in Scotland, but like the Los Angeles, Southern California area, there's a mountain range that it's all along the coast, and there's a mountain range that goes around all of Los Angeles County. 29 million people in that area. Los Angeles, San Diego County probably has, they're 5 million or so. So 30-some million people, and there's a mountain range that cordons them off from getting inland to the U.S. anymore. And there's like 5, maybe 6 major freeways that come out of this area. It's hundreds of miles. And you would have 30 million people trying to evacuate a city piling out onto these 6 highways to get out of the area. Well, where are they going? So part of that is, do you want to be on the road with that nonsense? Or do you want to like hunker down and figure out something in your house, fortify your home, and, like, how do you work that out? I mean, there's no good decisions. If that's the case, like everything's just.
We could sit down and write some realistic, real world survival novel on this kind of like exact scene. It'd be like combination thing.
Yeah. Well, you got to think, when you think about how to prepare, right? Okay, we know the survival pyramid, right? It's like it's my survival pyramid, which is based on kind of the rule of threes, right? Like, you have to have good mindset. You have to have good situational awareness. You have to have good safety and security and all these different things you need. But at some point, you could have the most secure home, but I think at some point, it's when you try to figure out how to prepare for it, you're looking at the biggest problem that you're going to have. You're not going to have problems with, most likely with coyotes or wild bears or something like that. You're going to have problems with people. People are the problem when it comes to disasters. Obviously, and when I say a disaster, people are the problem when it comes to like a lot of the downsides of disaster, right? Because you can have a natural disaster, and then what happens? People start looting. People start doing things, right? If people don't get food, they start doing things. So when you prepare and like, oh, you're going to stay at home, I think you have to look at what are humans going to try to do? How are they going to try to get in your house? Because that's the problem. Other people are going to want your stuff if you have it. So how are they going to get you? If you have to leave and head out of town, how are you going to leave and get out of town? And then how are you going to, and the number one way to deal with humans is time and distance, right? You want to have as much distance as you can between yourself and another human. And if there's not a lot of distance, then it's time. Like, hey, I have a metal reinforced front door in a brick building. Like, I got a lot. They're going to have to use sledgehammers to get through the wall to get to me. Right. That provides, that provides time. So thinking about how can you do everything, one, to extend your time in wherever you're going or where you're staying. And then two, how do you create time and distance between you and all the crazies that are going to be out there? In that situation, a normal person, your neighbor that you say hi to every day that has 2 little kids and now they don't have anything to eat, and he knows you're out walking around with some survival food in your back pocket, the world just got dicey with your neighbors. So again, it's time and distance between you and people.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought experiment. Everybody that's around you, imagine that person in a Mad Max scenario, what they'd be like, and then decide if you want to invest any more time with them.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to what not just the Mad Max scenario, but it's what happens when their level of comfort is no longer there. And level of comfort could be like their kids aren't eating and haven't eaten in 3 days. And they're crying, Daddy, I'm so hungry. So I think you get down to this point where there's nothing you can do everything you can on the front end to vet people, to verify people, like, hey, is this someone I want to be around, by comparing your values and try to find someone whose values aligned. Because when you get to those points where you're that shot at where it's that terrible, that's all you're going to have to go on. Right? Like, that's the only thing that's going to keep somebody from trying to eat your stuff and take your stuff is their values when their kids haven't eaten for 3 days or they haven't eaten for a week. So,
Yeah,
that's the nature of preparedness. Because again, dude, I have a year or 2 years worth of freeze dried food. I have a cupboard full of canned goods and long-term stuff. Like, I have my primary alternate contingency methods where I can sit in my house where I'm at as long as nobody tries to come in the front door. I could sit here for months and be okay, food and everything wise, as long as the water kept running. But when that's no longer the case, that's when the problems happen.
I'm not going to ask about your personal OPSEC, but do you like have a system where do you reckon people to form a tribe so that when it does hit the fan, they're ready with their gang in a sense?
Yeah, I think so. I have the benefit, I guess, of, because I did all the stuff that I did overseas, working in Iraq and Afghanistan, everywhere that I spent a bunch of years. And like, I kind of have developed that over time by people I work with. Like, I moved to Texas because a really good friend of mine from overseas lives nearby with his family.
Oh, perfect.
And we have other
Perfect,
people
man.
like that, right? So like, I've developed those relationships over years of, hey, I spent time with this guy overseas. We've been through training courses and like all the stuff. Like, I
Perfect.
know, so like, yeah. So we're very much on the same page with stuff. So I kind of have a skewed perspective on it, but I think it's never too late to start. It's hard to start because people tend to look at it as, sometimes people look at like who their mutual assistance group, prepper group, whatever is, and they look at it like a Dungeons and Dragons party. I don't know if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, right?
I don't have time for it, man.
What's that?
I don't have time for like role playing games like that much.
Oh man, that's all I did growing up. And
Okay.
but you get the idea behind Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like,
Yeah.
you create characters, and so when you build a party in Dungeons and Dragons, you wanted a couple of fighters because you're gonna go walk through the countryside and get attacked by orcs and goblins and stuff. So you wanted a couple of fighters who were really good at battle. You wanted a cleric that was good at healing people that got hurt in battle, right? And then you wanted this, you wanted a druid who was in touch with nature and could probably, grow you your homestead food, whatever. People look at it as that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
It is fun though. It is like a
I
hobby.
it is, but the problem I have with that is now when you prioritize a person's capabilities as opposed to who that person, again, like we just talked about, right? What happens when the world goes to hell? It's all about values. That's what's separating us from the evil and the craziness, like and the people we're with. So rather than look at what can someone do, look at, is this a good person, and do I have similar values, and that and feel them out from that way. Like, talk to them, like, have they ever really struggled in life, right? Like, because that's important. I don't mean, and some people that haven't struggled, it's not like you can just go out and like, let me struggle, but it helps you understand them a little bit better. Like, oh, this person's been through some hard stuff, and this is their perspective because of being through this stuff. Because if you can get people that your values aligned and you get along with well, and everybody's on the same page of music, and if food gets tight, everybody knows they're gonna, like, all the adults get that they're gonna eat less so the kids can eat more, kind of thing. That, like, you're all on that kind of, whatever your little tribe has as far as values, that's what your thing is. Because you can take someone who, remember, capability, right? Mindset, knowledge, skill, resources as ability, and then luck. So if you have somebody that has a good mindset, your values align, that's one part of the capability formula. The other part is if you have all your resources, and that's what your group does. You buy a bunch of stuff, you stockpile a warehouse full of end of the world stuff. Well, the other two things are knowledge and skill. So you can't really shift a person's mindset and their values. But as a group, you can say, hey, we all get along really well. Who's interested in going and taking a first aid class, and then maybe take a work that into becoming an emergency medical technician? Who wants to learn how to use some basic GMRS radios, and then eventually to go become a ham radio operator and come back and teach us all how to do it. And then,
Exactly.
like, you be
That's
our,
perfect,
in the
man.
military, you be our comms guy. So I think rather than where a lot of people in preparedness look at it from, I need a doctor, I need this. It's like they're assembling assembling the crew of the Starship Enterprise. Instead of trying to assemble the crew of the Starship Enterprise, find people who you like and that you get along well with, and then figure out what each person does and their interest is, and that they do well. Maybe there's some old person that's in that group that has a ton of knowledge, but, like, dude, I'm 56 years old, right? And I go work out every day. I do an hour. I get up. I do an hour. I kick my ass. But I'm not I'm not a 25-year-old Army Ranger anymore. Like, I don't have that level of physical ability. So I'm not necessarily the guy that would need to go out and do your Army Ranger stuff if you needed some Army Ranger stuff. But you know what? I'm the guy who knows how to do inventory. I'm the guy who knows how to run this. I can do that. There's a ton of stuff I can do sitting in the back that would benefit and support those guys that are out there doing things. So playing to people's strengths, making sure that your values align, I think that's how you build a crew, build a team,
Absolutely
a group.
brilliant.
I would never call myself a gang either. Because once you become a gang, then you have to have the warlord of the gang, and you can't be a warlord and a gang and be good in the apocalypse. Like, as
You
soon as
still
you
need
you
that.
have a warlord and you're a gang, guys start wearing the black and they start doing all the crazy stuff that they do in Furioso and all that, with the crazy hair and shooting up cans of spray paint and all the stuff they do.
You still need a way to resolve conflicts where there's like you need somebody to come and make a decision sometimes as well. Otherwise, you'll have a power vacuum in a sense.
Well, the problem. Oh, inside the group, you mean?
Yeah, because if you have two people that are equally ranked, and they both like want to do something their way, if there's not somebody that can tie break them, or you have some very interesting democracy way of deciding things. Um,
So, well, you're going to have to plan on having disruptions, right? And so, one of the things, like when they started doing the COVID lockdowns here in the U.S., I was living I was living in a decent gated community outside, just outside of Las Vegas, and between me, like 10 blocks down, wasn't so nice. Where I was at was good. 10 blocks down, you're kind of in the hood, and then like 12 blocks, you were definitely in the hood. So when they're getting ready to do lockdowns and no one knows what's going on, I mean, going back to February and March of 2020, I was like, man, they might be locking down. Like I was getting ready for them to lock down, and like states start locking their borders down, and you couldn't get from state to state here in the U.S. So I said, you know what? I don't want to be in Las Vegas, living 7 blocks or 10 blocks from the hood, if the world's going to go sideways, because no one still knew at that point, right? We didn't really know enough, and it was like, I've had malaria 3 times, man. I've been around tropical. I'm like, if this thing's real and it gets going, it's going to cause problems. So I loaded up I guess you guys call them a caravan, a little travel trailer, with all my with all the stuff that YouTube doesn't like me to talk about. Tons of food, clothes, my 2 cats, my dog, and all my stuff that I could think of that, hey, you know what? This is what I need living in a trailer to survive the end of the world. And I drove from California. I drove from Las Vegas. I picked the trailer up in California. Drove from Las Vegas to Michigan, which is like, I don't know, 2,000 miles,
yeah.
and went to a buddy's farm. So I, like, this whole bug out thing. I did it, and I went to my
Wow.
went to my
Nice.
buddy's farm in
Well,
Michigan,
that's a
and the
podcast in
entire
itself, man.
oh yeah, it's great. It was a shit show. The whole thing was a wreck. Like,
I want to
you
I
can
want
think
to podcast on this one as well at some point.
you think you're organized on that. I thought I was organized, dude. Like, no, it was a mess, and like such a mess that, and it's a wild story because I literally went through a monsoon, a flash flood, a blizzard, a fog storm, and an ice storm on the way there. And and most of that wasn't so bad, but the ice storm, I'm filling up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is up in the mountains. It's cold. This was February, right? No, March. And I'm filling up gas. I'm standing there, and talk about, again, why we have to think about preparedness. I was in flip flop. I just left Las Vegas. I was in flip flops, shorts, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. And now I'm at, like, I don't know, whatever, Cheyenne, Wyoming is at like 5,000 feet. I don't know, however meters, whatever you funny people call that stuff. But I'm at, like, thousands of feet up in the mountains, and it's like 28 degrees out. That's okay, because I'm only gonna be on my truck while I fill up gas. I'm not worried about it. But then I look, and this mist starts coming down the mountain. Fog. Well, you live in Scotland. What happens when fog hits like 28-degree temperature? It turns to ice. So now I couldn't move my truck because I'm pulling this trailer loaded of all the stuff I'm not supposed to talk about on YouTube that's really heavy, and everything for the end of the world. And I'm like, I can't. If I hit the brakes, my trailer's going sideways on the ice and skidding. So yeah, it was the whole bugging out thing. The reason my stuff was a mess was because I wasn't organized. You got to be really organized on the front end and have a plan, and like literally visualize. Okay, if like you're going to leave in your car, what am I putting in that car and where's it going? And
Yeah.
think about it like on that level, man. But yeah, it's bugging out ain't easy, dude.
Yeah, if like I had the money for something like that, I would basically have some kind of big 4x4, and then inside it I would have like different layers of like road quality. This so if there's like the roads are blocked, then I'd want to jump on a dirt bike or something like that. A dirt bike and a trailer, and on that trailer I'd have like a push bike so that I could when a dirt bug runs out of fuel, then I can jump on and I'll probably have an inch bag on the actual bicycle on a trailer on the bike, like Inception,
Yeah.
like one of those Russian dolls.
Well, when I was heading into Cheyenne, when I was going up there where the ice storm hit and I couldn't do anything, it was fog on the other side of the mountain. And my truck, I had a Ford F-150. Yeah, it's an American truck, 4-wheel drive, little crew cab. Again, I had my 2 cats and my dog in the cab with me. And I'm going up the mountain, going up the mountain, towing this trailer that's just way overloaded. I kept thinking that the wheels were going to pop off and it's going to be laid down and like the police are going to show up. They're like, what's this? Like guns, ammo, end of the world food, camouflage clothes, all my stuff. And, but then I can only go uphill. Like I was only going like 10 miles an hour and I kept, because of the fog. And then I kept thinking, what's going to happen when a semi truck, drives into the back of me? Anyway, that was so underpowered that after a year later, I bought, and we just have different sized vehicles here in the U.S. So I bought the biggest GMC, General Motors Corporation pickup. It has a dually is two wheels on each side in the back.
All right. Okay.
So that so it's an 8-foot bed. It's the biggest truck they made that year, 4-wheel drive. And then I put 100-gallon tank in the bed of the truck and that I can put diesel fuel in. So I have like a 2,000, depending on
Sheesh.
if I'm not towing anything and the bed of the truck's full, I could go about 2,300 miles, 2,400
You're the
miles.
real deal, man.
Oh, I love it, dude. I got to get a little, camper shell, whatever you call them over there, camper shell for the back of it and set that up as a living space so I can hit the road. My goal is to be able to get, because I live in Texas, which is sort of central on the south side of the U.S., is I can get to any point in the United States now, depending on. So I have friends that live all over the country. So depending on what's happening, I could make it to anybody's house that I would want to stay with during a mess. And I have a trailer I can pull that I can load all my food and all my end of the world stuff into a utility trailer, and I could go and end up at their house with showing up like, because when somebody comes during what do people say? Oh, well, if things go bad, I'll come to your house. Well, I'm the guy that shows up with a trailer full of supplies when that goes bad.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like you got to think completely selfish in a scenario like that because
Yeah,
what do you bring to the table? So I think everybody's a good prep. Do your day job, but then learn skills on the side that will be useful in an apocalyptic sort of scenario. And in terms of a tribe, who would I like to have in my tribe? I'd like to have a dentist. I'd like to have a radio operator. I'd like to have somebody who's good with natural medicines because all the antibacterial stuff will needs complicated infrastructure to have. So you need someone who's expert in that, and then yeah, military guys as well, I guess. But like my
yeah.
skill as a software engineer is pretty much useless in a Mad Max scenario because there's not going to be the internet.
The other thing
No-
that you could do too, rather than a dentist, is if you find somebody that's like a doctor or physician's assistant, a lot of time, and you have some good reference materials, like a lot of times they'll be able to kind of figure it out. But it's having the equipment, right? Like
Yeah,
what do
yeah.
you
You
do? Like how,
basically
what are you just going to grab a pair of pliers and pull an infected tooth out of somebody's face? Or do you have like whatever? I don't know
well,
what
you
do
need
they
a drill
use?
as
Like,
well. Like so you just need a drill for drilling out like cavities,
you know
some
what, man? So
painkillers.
when I was in Afghanistan, I was in Afghanistan in 2004. Um, the dental over there was he was the oldest guy. This is kind of funny. The dentist that was at this base I was at, he was the oldest guy serving on active duty in the U.S. military. The guy had been in World War. I want to say he was in like World War II. So this is going back now
No
30
way.
years. This was 2000. No, 20 years, 2004. I want to say he was in World War II in Korea, and by the 60s he retired from dentistry. And then when we started messing around in Afghanistan and everywhere, they were looking for somebody, and so he came back on active duty. So
Amazing.
he's the oldest guy, and this guy was burly. He was like this big, old, really strong dude. And his whole thing was like, "Hey, man, we're in a combat zone. We're like," he goes, "I'm not doing fillings. I'm pulling teeth." He goes, "You don't need the tooth to live." He's like, "But doing fillings, that's not happening." So, like, if you went in there and you had a cavity, it was like you're going to get your tooth yanked out most likely.
But I feel like it
So,
doesn't take that long to do, man. Why I don't get I don't get that.
I don't know. That was his thing. Maybe he just said it to keep people from going in there. The hilarious part was there was this one dude that was this guy. I was a private contractor that he had put gold caps on all his teeth, And so, because he had these caps on him, there's like dirt and shit got behind it. And so, all like, he got a bunch of infections. He came in one day and he's just, my mouth hurts. And so I'm like, well, go over to the dentist. He had 8 major cavities underneath these gold caps. And I said, how did it go? And because I told him, like, you either have to leave country and go get it fixed, or the dentist will pull your teeth. And he's like, I don't want to miss work. So I'll figure it out later. And so he went and I said, how was it? And he goes, man, that old man, he climbed right up in my lap, pushed my chest down, and he just stuck his things in there and started pulling my teeth out. 8 of them. And I was like,
That's wrong, man.
I was like, I go, that's terrible. He's like, no, that wasn't the worst part. I'm like, well, how does it get much worse than that, right? I'm like, well, what's the worst part? And he goes, the guy would throw the tooth like out of his pliers, like he's playing basketball, would throw the tooth across the room, and he had like an army metal field sink, like, real like metal. And he goes,
Right.
my tooth would land in it and go clink, 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 and bounce around the sink every time. And he goes, he didn't miss one shot. All 8 teeth ended up in that sink across the room. Anyway, so I guess what I was getting at with that is, having the ability to fill a cavity may not be that easy to do. So it might, and that's something I don't think pulling teeth is that hard. That's probably something, you could learn how to do, just because it's not like they're going in there and tying anything off. They're just yanking a tooth out. So I imagine most of it's technique and how to get the mouth open enough where you get the pliers in.
That's my weekend YouTube viewing sorted.
Because I look at a lot of this stuff too, man. When I look at preparedness, is how did they do it 200 years ago?
Exactly.
100 years ago, right? And so 100 years ago, 200 years ago, like I don't know if it's true. I think it is. The George Washington, right, the first president of the U.S., he didn't have any teeth. He'd lost all his teeth. They used to just pull your teeth out. And so he ended up having like this fake, and you can see it online, like look at Washington's teeth. They look horrible. Like, oh my God, dude. It looked like somebody was like out of a James Bond movie if you saw these guys with their fake teeth back then. But that's what they did, was they would pull people's teeth, right? Like, easiest way to keep I think that's the fastest way if you don't have the capability to drill because what's the problem if you don't pull it out? Then they get an abscess that sets back in the head, and now you have an infection, right? And so you got to get those things out, or it could kill people.
Yeah, I had a friend that almost died from that. He was brain damaged after it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and that speaks to the other side of this, right? Everybody should go to the dentist ahead of time. And I'm terrible with it. Like, you should go get a cleaning once every 6 months is what they say here in the U.S., where they scrape your teeth and do all this stuff.
How much does that cost?
How
much does that cost over there?
It depends on where you go. I think it's usually $100, $150, somewhere in that ballpark.
That's okay.
No, it's not bad. I mean, you get a full. Usually that comes with full X-rays and the whole 9 yards.
It's okay. Here in Scotland, it's £50, which is about $70. And we have the NHS, but the NHS doesn't provide you a hygienist. You have to start to pay for it.
Yeah, that's not bad. So, but go get your teeth checked out. Like, something I do is it's a company here that's just starting up, so they're not advertising it, but it's through a buddy of mine. And like, I went and paid, it wasn't cheap. It was $800 to have a bunch of lab tests, my own lab work done, to see what my different values are and see how, like, where I can improve my health. And so then it's like, oh, okay, well, I need to do this more. I need to eat this less. I need to do that, because why not? Right. Like maintaining our health, that's the front end of everything. When it comes to survival period, when it's situational awareness, if you're not able to see a problem coming, then it doesn't matter what you've done for it, unless you're wearing body armor and it's some sort of thing, you're wearing your Kevlar sleeves and it's some sort of slasher with a knife that you didn't see. Well, it doesn't matter all your preps in the world if you don't know it's coming, you're not ready for it, stuff's going to work out the way it does. So then you move into your safety and security, the ability to defend yourself. Well, if you're gimped up and you're not as flexible as you can be, and you're not as in shape as you can, and I'm not dude, I struggle with this stuff. I'm not saying like this is me, but if you're not in that kind of, if you're not in as good a shape as you can be for your age, your gender, your situation, your in fact, I have friends that are were here like legends when I was in the Army Rangers that now they struggle to get by from day to day because they're so busted up. So what can you do to be the best you can possibly be when it comes to your health and fitness?
Yeah, when it comes to
Right?
fitness now,
Maybe you're in a
I used
wheelchair. What's that?
yeah, I used to be like going to the gym trying to push weights and stuff and get the weights up, and I couldn't care less about that. All I'm now about now is how do I prevent dislocations and keep my joints strong. That's all I really care
So I
about now.
do. So what I started doing was I looked at it, I'm like, man, I got to start doing something. Is I go out in the morning and I do 20 minutes, and I'm a sunglass wearer. I don't like going out without sunglasses on. But there's a lot of talk that the sun, you know, we're humans, right? We've had this circadian rhythm where we wake up in the morning, like usually like with first light, you get up, and then that's our how we've always been wired. So when I get up in the morning, I drink a big glass of water because most of us don't drink enough water. And then I throw my shoes on, and I hate it. Like I don't like going out in the morning and doing this. I want to sit on the couch and watch YouTube videos and find out how screwed up the world is, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't like going out and doing this stuff. But like I literally have told myself now, like doing this show, doing the work I do on Mind4Survival, and any of my work that I do, I don't let myself do anything until I get an hour of activity in the morning. And literally, it's sometimes we have to adjust because when we're younger, we do things a certain way. When I was young, I could run 20, 30, 40 miles. Like I didn't have a problem with it. I was in the Army Ranger fitness. Like that was our thing, was our fitness. I'm not anywhere close to that now. So I'll go out and walk 20 minutes because I get the sunshine in my eyes. That's good. That has chemical effects on our bodies. That's positive. You get the vitamin D. And I got the Apple Watch, and people don't like being tracked. I get it. But this on my Apple Watch, I can set up my fitness rings where I can look down and I can see my heart rate. So I know at the end of my walk, every time I go for a walk, I try to make sure my heart rate's faster each time. So that way I'm upping in incremental spots. I'm upping my VO2. I'm upping my fitness. Then when I get back, I do a stretching exercise, which I'll have to send you, remind me, shoot me an email later. It's a shoulder stretching exercise that you use like these rubber bands you kind of put up high. My buddy showed it to me a month ago when I was in Los Angeles. It's changed my life because I dislocated my shoulder. I played rugby for a bunch of years and dislocated my shoulders. And so my shoulders have been a mess. And I started doing this. It's 10 minutes a day. It's the best part of my day. So I do this shoulder exercise, and then there's another guy on Instagram and X, Twitter, whatever, called the knees over toes guy, and it's about how to stretch your legs and do leg strengthening stuff. So I'm not doing any weights, but I'm doing I'm doing squats with my feet at like weird angles where my toes are pointed down or my toes are pointed up, and doing a lot of stretching. And then I have a stationary bike, and I do like a 10-minute warm up on that. And then I do some sprints. There's a thing called I'm not up there yet, but it's what they found is if you increase basically your heart rate, your VO2 max for your exercise thing, and you can look at that online, is if you increase like the amount of times where you're huffing and puffing, working out hard where you can't catch your breath or you're trying to catch your breath, that they've shown like they did studies on people that were in their 50s, and like your heart when you get in your 50s, early 50s, maybe late 40s, your heart starts shrinking a little bit and it starts becoming harder. Well, those people in their 50s, by increasing the workout on their heart by working out hard for a few minutes at a time, over a year or year and a half, they decrease their heart's relative age to like in their
Wow.
30s. So my thing is like, if we're going to prepare, mine like that starts with us. And
Yeah.
it's hard. I force myself, dude. I battle myself sometimes. That hour workout that I do in the morning, because I know a lot of us don't like doing this shit. I don't. That hour workout sometimes will take me 3 hours to get through it, because I'm just my inner shit does not want me to like, no, don't do that. Do it early. Get out of here. And so I sit down and like you go on YouTube and you look up like motivational videos where they have
Yeah.
like these people talking and there's music behind, like, yeah, get up, do this stuff. Like, dude, like literally I'll throw those on. Like, it's a process chore for me to get through it. But at the end of it though, is it's getting me healthier, and it's making me, it extends my life, makes me more prepared, and makes me feel good. I don't feel good before I do it, and I don't feel good during it, but afterwards I always feel good.
It'd be good to set up like a
So
ham radio group in your local area when you have one guy that's like dedicated to like broadcast, and he's like wakes you up in the morning, you like, and the beep, 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 and you all get up and do
yeah.
it together, you know.
Have you done the ham radio? Do they have ham radio? They got ham radio in Scotland, right?
Oh well, they have these annoying laws here where the amateur radio bands, you need to have like some study for some exam. I can't be bothered with it yet. I
Uh,
want to get like a good radio because I got a few of these Chinese cheap ones, and they're all different the way they set up, and you end up learn one, and you forget how it works. I want to just save up and get some really high quality one from the States or something, and then just really learn that well. But then I probably need to get the license at some point because
yeah.
yeah,
That's a good thing, man. Ham radio is a good thing. I keep wanting to do it. It's just,
it's
it's the
useful. It's
time
useful.
side.
It's
Like,
useful. It's useful in places where you're like in a convoy, you know, and you don't want to have you have good
well, the other
mobile
side of that,
reception.
like, I have some friends when I was working overseas. I worked with some guys that had been in the South African in their recce force and stuff there, and like they had talked about it. Like, one of them lived out in the country, and he says, "Dude, there's roving bands of people will come by and break into your home and kill your family and steal all your stuff out in the countryside." And so most of the homes where he was at, they had, the home was all within a wall, like there was a perimeter wall that had a good gate on it, and he said they all had basically a ham radio, and all the other neighbors in that area all kept their radio on a certain frequency, and if anybody had problems happening, they'd they broadcast it to all the other neighbors, and then everybody'd
Wow.
grab their guns and show up.
And so the raiders learn that, and they learned who to avoid.
Well, I imagine that the Raiders didn't get a second shot at learning it after the first time it happened.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they showed up and were nice. I think they showed up and killed everybody.
Right.
So
Man. All right, Brian. I'm sure you've got stuff to do, but this is a
yeah,
nice setup for some more podcasts, man.
yeah. Anytime you want to do it, man, I love it. Quick conversation, dude. It's fun.
So, where can people find you, man?
Mind the number 4survival.com, all one word. So head over there. If you go, same thing, mind the number 4survival.com /book. And that's where my, the sign up list to get notified when my book comes out next month. I'm really looking forward to it.
What's the book about?
Mind for Survival. No, it's, so the book is, it's mostly a mindset book. It kind of, what it does is it lays the foundation on mindset. So like I said earlier, the survival pyramid, to me, the foundation is mindset. Then you have situational awareness, survival, safety, all the other stuff that goes up the pyramid. But if you don't have a good mindset, it kind of, it can, everything, if you don't build your house on a good foundation, everything that comes after is kind of, wonky and has problems. So it's really about the mindset of preparedness. And I wrote it, I didn't realize when I wrote it what it would end up being, but it's any side of, you can plug in anybody's preparedness kind of methods into this thing, into this process. And it just tells you how to look at stuff, what kind of perspective. It shows you how to do a basic risk assessment so you know what your risks truly are. Because a lot of us think, like a parent will think, oh, my greatest risk to me and my family is my kids, like someone abducting my kids. Because that's the most significant in their mind, the most impactful is that. But really, the greatest risk might be you have a car that the door lock's broken on, and it's a car that people are stealing in your neighborhood, and you can't get to work without your car. But people aren't messing with kids in the neighborhood. So when you figure out your risk, which is you identify your assets, you figure out what your threat is, then you figure out what the threat's capability of harming you. So you put a metric to that. You figure out what the impact of the loss is, and then you figure out what your vulnerability is. And you put numbers to all that, and then what ends up coming out is what's truly most at risk. Where can you do the things that will get you the biggest bang for your buck? And that's all metrics driven. So it's kind of it's based on work I've done with friends. My whole kind of community does risk assessment, risk management. So it's kind of risk management thing. It talks to you about priorities of survival, what order those should go in. It talks about what is preparedness, the goals. What are you really trying to do? Your goals of preparedness are to survive. Then once you've managed to survive, I mean, think about like that TV show Alone. They try to survive every day, and then what do? Then they try to increase their position, make themselves more comfortable, give them more food so they can survive longer. And then what's the last part? It's self, right? So I talk about I think I have 8 rules for self in it. Like, how do you live a life that you enjoy the moment rather than, we can't go through life just worrying about tomorrow constantly. You can't let your worry for tomorrow destroy your today. Because then if nothing ever happens other than, like everybody, eventually we run out of runway down here on the earth. Then what have you done, right? You've just lived your life worried about tomorrow and never really enjoyed it as much. So I kind of focus on that stuff, because if survival, if surviving and minimizing struggle are our goals of preparedness, which they kind of are, what's the point of that, right? That's the third goal of preparedness, to live your best life. And you don't do that when you're anxiety. Dude, I got PTSD, man. I know it. I know, like, I can write a textbook on anxiety, right? So, you don't live your best life when you're anxious and worried and upset all the time and all that. So that's a kind of broad strokes what the book's about.
Yeah, Jesus preached that. He says, "Don't worry about tomorrow." And if you're, in a sense, worrying, it's damaging your survival anyway because you're just negative health benefits.
Well, it's one of those things, man. It's the human condition. We're hardwired to worry. It's part of it's part of our instincts. It's part of the, what triggers the fight or flight response. Worry is a form of the fight or flight response. Because what do they say, right? How do you not worry? Well, that's to stay in the present, not think about the future and the past. Okay, as soon as you stop thinking about the future, I'm not worried about something that's happening. As soon as I stop thinking about the past, I'm not worried about what I did in the past or whatever. I'm in the present, right? And so you dump all that worry. So it's trying to do that to where, it's where you try to manage that worry. There's times to worry. And then there's times where it's like, well, am I really worried about something that's legitimate? Or is this just because I had a bad past experience? I mean, I got, I don't know, over a decade. I spent over 2,000 days on the ground in Iraq, right? I got over a decade overseas in combat zones. So I got a lot in my brain and I had a mom that was kind of crazy. So I got a lot in my brain that causes me to, worry. If it's hot, my anxiety starts going. If it's, if I'm driving down the road and I see a red car, like I got smashed out by a red car in Iraq, I see a red car, my anxiety starts ratcheting it up. So I got plenty of stuff that ratchets my anxiety up all day. The point though of that is, how do we deal with it? Do I say I can't leave my house? I don't want to ever see a red car again. I got to do all this stuff. Or do I say, you know what? It's okay. Like, let me do what I can. But after that, like, I want to enjoy life. Life is meant to feel good, not to feel fear.
Well, friends, it looks like we have a lot more to unpack from this treasure of information here. So this is like lots of like previews in one video here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Watch out with me when you ask a question, dude.
All right, Brian. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk more.
Yeah, man. Thanks, dude. Hey, let me know when when you get this posted. I'll share it.
Probably tomorrow, man.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you later. Next time. Nikos out.